Hello everyone, and welcome back to my Oxygen Not Included playthrough series, where I'm going to be showing you how to take a base from the early game until the ultra late game. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing on handling all the carbon dioxide that's managed to accumulate in my base, as well as handling the polluted oxygen, hooking up some water supply for my base so I can eventually transition to having proper toilets, as well as hooking up power so that everything can be drawn from my central coal generators. Alright, let's just get right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is research the technologies that I need in order to get rid of this carbon dioxide and this polluted oxygen. So I'm going to go to the research tab. I'm going to look for decontamination, which I believe is over here. Alright. So if I research this tab, that provides access to both deodorizers, which use sand to take polluted oxygen in a 3x3 area around the deodorizer, eliminate it, and give off some oxygen. So that'll get rid of our polluted oxygen for now, and is our main way of removing polluted oxygen for most of the game. Secondly, it unlocks carbon skimmers, and this is what we use to get rid of carbon dioxide. Carbon skimmers remove carbon in an area around it, but in order to work, they require power, an input pipe of water, and an output pipe that gives off polluted water. So we'll also need some way to deal with that. So I'm just going to click on this so my research begins, start the game running, and put it on super speed. The next thing I'm going to focus on is changing around my priorities a little bit. I meant to do this in the last video, but I got sidetracked and forgot. So I currently have two duplicants who have a high agriculture skill. So one of them is Stinky, for example. Duplicants that have a higher agriculture skill have an increased chance of receiving seeds when doing harvest tasks. So for example, this mealwood plant that's nearly finished growing, once it's finished and I perform the harvest task, there's a chance that it will give off a seed. The base harvest chance is 10%, but having a duplicant that has a higher agriculture skill increases this chance. So because I don't really have many wild mealwood plants available that I can dig up to plant new seeds, I'm very reliant on this random chance to give me the new seeds I need in order to grow my farm. So the fastest way that I can grow it is to prevent all my duplicants from harvesting and only allow the duplicants that have the highest agriculture skill from doing the harvesting. That's also going to have the bonus effect of consolidating all of the skill points towards agriculture that I will be gaining by doing these harvest tasks and only giving those that experience to the ones that I already want to be doing the task. So I won't have a bunch of level 1 or level 2 agriculture duplicants. I'll have one much higher level agriculture duplicant. So I'm just going to change that right now. I'm going to go to the priorities tab. I'm going to look for farming, disallow it for all my duplicants, and then put it on very high priority for Stinky. Okay. Alright, one of the other main tasks I need to get through is to stop my duplicants from using these manual generators all the time. And I'm going to accomplish that by allowing power to come from this isolated system and go into this system. Eventually, I'll probably have all the buildings in my base running off of heavy watt wires, but currently it's not worth the time or effort. Also, heavy watt wires take 100 kilograms of metal per tile, whereas these regular wires only take 25. So I would need to spend 4 times as much metal. That becomes a lot more valuable when you have wires stretching from power sources over here to like some buildings over here, because then you don't need to have branching pads all emanating from your main power supply. But currently it's just a waste of metal. So I'm just going to add a power transformer. The simple explanation of how a power transformer works is they take power in on the top left area of the power transformer. Let's just place it so I can actually show you. So here on this top left, and if I were to press O to reverse it, then the top right. And they supply power at the bottom right or at the bottom left if you have it reversed in direction. So you can supply the power to this power transformer with any sort of wire that you like. Typically you'll end up doing it using heavy watt wire just because you're usually going to want to go from some concentrated source of power. So for example, here we have 1,200 watts constantly being produced if we need power from these coal generators, or however much power that we need coming from the battery. and we only want 1,000 watts on this side. So usually it's going to go from some higher gauge wire to a lower gauge wire. And I'm not going to fully connect this because currently this circuit runs effectively on its own. And if power is being drawn by all of these buildings, it's fine to get that power from the batteries. It's fine to get that power from these manual generators because they're only going to supply as much power as is required by all of these buildings. However, if I had, say, 3 manual generators, which each produce 400 watts on this at the same time, and I tried to run all 3 manual generators, even though the manual generators themselves don't show up as any sort of potential load on the wire because they're actually supplying power, they can still cause the wire to overload. So the reason I only put 2 manual generators here is because if I had 3 and the batteries weren't entirely full, duplicates would probably go to all 3 manual generators and run them at the same time. And that would cause 1,200 watts to go through the wire, even though it wouldn't say that there's any risk of a high potential load, and overload the wire. So to prevent that same sort of risk of having the 800 watts coming from these manual generators, as well as an additional 1,200 watts, well, because it's going through a power transformer, only 1,000 watts coming from here, I'm not going to allow these 2 power circuits to connect until I've disabled the manual generators, and that will prevent the risk that we're up against. So I'm going to increase the priority of this task. Not much point in doing that because there weren't many things for my duplicates to do anyways. I'm going to click on the manual generator, press enter to disable it. You can also enable or disable the buildings down here at the right. I just find that enter is faster. All right, and now that both manual generators have been disabled, I can go here to this wire and connect it to the main grid. So an interesting thing that you can do with wires, this works for automation wires, it works for heavy watt wires, regular wires, whatever sort of wires that you have, is if you have 2 wires that are not connected but are in adjacent squares, you can actually connect the wires just by applying a build task between them. So for example, if I click on this wire and go over here, you can see that when the build task is completed, it will end up connecting the 2 wires. But duplicates don't actually have to do this because they're never placing any new material. The wire that they're interested in is already placed here and already placed over here. So if I simply let go, this is now one continuous power circuit. You can't do that in reverse, however. So this is a very useful technique to prevent you from, like say, for example, in mid to late game, you're building some complicated power generator and you need to make sure that you don't accidentally turn it on before you're ready. You can set up all the wires and just not fully connect them, but build the wires in all the tiles. And then whenever it's done, even if it's completely inaccessible to your duplicates, you can just manually connect the wires up yourself. All right, so I have access to a new blueprint. I'm gonna print that off. However, at this point in the game, I'm only interested in having 8 duplicates. So I'm not actually gonna print any more duplicates off. And the only thing available that isn't a duplicate is the salt water, so I'm just gonna go with that. All right, sweet. So we have our power hooked up throughout the base, which is saving a lot of duplicate time and effort. Just go to our resources tab. I'm going to check to see how much consumable ore we have, which is our coal. So we only have just over 3.5 tons. It's not that much. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this and make sure that this doesn't get too low. We're probably fine down until about 1 ton, but I wouldn't want it to get any lower than that. And just for safety's sake, I might actually set my duplicates off to dig out some coal relatively soon. All right. So the next task that I'm interested in completing is dealing with this carbon dioxide. And now my duplicates have finally finished all the research. So I'm going to go to the oxygen tab, which also deals with carbon dioxide. Click on the carbon skimmer. I'm going to place it somewhere down at the bottom of my base. That way, the carbon dioxide, as it flows to the bottom of my base, will make its way to this carbon skimmer. And whenever it shows up, the carbon skimmer will start to run and eliminate the carbon dioxide. So this seems to be a low enough point. Eventually, I'll end up putting some floors here, but for now, this is fine. And I'm actually going to dig out some additional space in my base. So here you can see that this water, the water level has dropped to the point that there's no longer any water on this level. So I'm not at any risk for getting rid of these natural tiles. All right. So I'd like to supply power to this carbon skimmer, but currently there is some regular wire in the way. So I'm actually going to delete this regular wire over here, clicking X. And I'm going to place a wire bridge across this connection. So sometimes the game can be a bit finicky when dealing with wire bridges around transformers. So you might have to move it around a little bit and get it to actually accept having the wire bridge in the correct spot. But now I've got it in place, and it's going to transfer power in any direction, from this input to this input, or this input to this input. The game will handle all that by itself. You don't really need to worry about it. Once that's finished, I'm going to run some heavy watt wire across this spot in the middle of the bridge where there's no longer any regular wire, and connect this to the carbon skimmer. All right. So we're going to have this connected up. The next thing we need to do is supply water to this carbon skimmer and have some sort of output to get rid of the waste polluted water. So we don't currently have enough technology in order to deal with the wastewater. So I'm actually going to research water sieves in this distillation research tab. Water sieves use any sort of filtration medium, similar to how the how the deodorizers use sand to get rid of polluted oxygen, and they will turn polluted water into regular water, just like how the deodorizers turn polluted oxygen into regular oxygen. All right. So this, the deodorizer handles gases in a 3x3 area around itself, although it can't reach polluted oxygen through walls or floors. But the water sieve only handles piped inputs, and it can handle quite a lot at a time. I believe it's 5 kilograms per second. So one water sieve is really all you need, even until like hundreds of cycles into the game, or at least I find. So I'm going to construct a way to have this water go throughout my base. I think the best method that I'm going to use... All right. So I'm going to, before adding any additional tasks, so I know that this pipe won't end up getting filled and I won't break a pipe that has liquid in it, I'm going to get rid of this piece of pipe. And normally I would be doing a bunch of tasks all at once and waiting for my duplicates to finish them, but I'm just going to do them one at a time so I can explain them a bit better. All right. And I'm going to get rid of this pipe, although that will spill a little bit of water onto the floor. Right, and just mop up that water before we continue. Pressing M and then 9 to make sure that I get rid of that water as quickly as possible. And now what I'm going to do is make use of liquid bridges, which are roughly the equivalent of these wire bridges that we used earlier that allowed us to keep these two wires separate. However, liquid bridges are a bit different in that they're not ambidirectional. Liquid bridges don't allow liquid to go either way through the bridge, but they can only go one way. And they have a number of additional uses as well because they have a priority. So let's actually just build some of these and I'll show you what I mean. So if I build a liquid bridge here, starting with this input, this white input, and ending at the green output, this will allow water to go to this point, skip across the bridge, and then go across into the metal refinery that we had previously built. However, if I continue this pipe all the way down over here to the right, you might wonder how the water is going to behave if the metal refinery is requesting water and something else is also requesting water over here on the right. The answer to that is the liquid pipe always takes priority. So if water reaches this liquid pipe and there is space on the other side and some sort of requester, it will stop all the flow down this way and only send water down this way. So typically as you build your base, you're going to want to pay attention to whatever systems are the most important, and you can ensure that all of the water in your base will go to the most critical system by putting a liquid bridge pointing towards that system. Then whatever water happens to be left over is what goes to the next system, and then the next system, and then the next system. So you can disconnect your various base structures that require liquids, and also with gases. It works the same way with gas bridges, and ensure that you have a priority queue set in place just by the ordering of where these liquid bridges are placed. So I'm actually going to build this liquid bridge up to here because I anticipate that later on I'm going to end up building a bathroom, probably right here. I might build it over here and move the beds up here. What I like to do is have my water go up the right side of my base in this central column and have the polluted water come down on the left side of the base. And it'll then find its way to water sieve somewhere and then be dumped back into my main water supply. So let's also build a liquid bridge here to make sure that the output of this metal refinery is not mixed with this water input for all my other base structures. And I'm going to put a liquid bridge over here so that when the water reaches this point, I prioritize giving it to this carbon skimmer first. There's a second reason why I like to build liquid bridges. You could, for example, just hook up the carbon skimmer by doing something like this. And let's get rid of this liquid bridge, for example. So now if there is some water requester down here at the right, water can reach down here and it can reach over here with no problem. The only difficulty is that when a packet of water, which goes down a pipe like this in 10 kilogram packets, and it reaches a fork, the packet stops for a moment and it doesn't flow at full speed. Even if the only requester of water is down here at the right, and this entire pipe is backed up over here, so there's no way for water to go down it, water will reach this pipe and half the time go over here and half the time will try to go up this pipe, which will block it. So you end up with half the throughput of water. So if you have a bunch of these splits going down, say for example, I had a water requester over here and it continues going up and I had another water requester over here, by the time you reach this end, only half the water is able to get through here. So you only have 5 kilograms per second going through this pipe, then only 2.5 kilograms per second. And it can continue and continue to get more and more congested until barely any water is able to flow through your pipe at all. But you can avoid this problem entirely by building liquid bridges, because liquid bridges have the additional property that they, once they're full, don't block the flow of water through this pipe. So if instead of having just a regular connection, I get rid of that and put a liquid bridge here. Oops. The water won't try to go to the right half the time and up half the time. It'll go to the right only until this is completely satisfied, and then it will stop going to the right and only go up. So you'll have the full throughput of water once this pipe is fully satisfied. Which means you can have high throughput to wherever you want, especially if all the little branches that are coming off only need a little bit of water once in a while. All right, so let's just get rid of this additional piping and build this the way that I would like to have it constructed. Okay, actually I will do it this way. In addition to having the water go up on the right, I tend to have water every other row. I don't place it unless I need it, but I like to reserve it so that I have water here, polluted water here, polluted water here. So I'm going to have the polluted water come down this output side, cross over here with a bridge, and the input will come from here and just go straight down and connect. All right. So we have our water hooked up. We have our power hooked up. The only thing that remains is to get rid of this polluted water somewhere. So we're going to need to build a water sieve, probably over here, hook that up to power and connect it to this pipe, and then connect it to some sort of liquid vent to allow the water to go back into our main water supply. So let's actually go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to take some... I do not currently have access to mesh tile, so I'll just take some regular tiles, build it across like so, build some tiles with gaps just to prevent the use of additional materials, and then go to my refinement tab, which is where I should find... Oh, that's right, I haven't finished researching yet. So once this finishes researching, then I will build the water sieve. But I can still finish constructing the hookups. Have this water come down like so. Okay, my mouse glitched out. Very good. How would I like to get this to come across like this? Alright, so I'm going to dig this out like so. I'll have this tile built to prevent the water from going into the rest of my base. Put that on priority 9 so that it happens before this all gets dug out. Alright. And now this water pipe can come up like this and across in this meshy fashion, and it should reach right to the water sieve. I might need to move these around a little bit. It's getting a little bit messy. By my next video, I believe I might start trying to make a more sustainable water storage and get rid of a lot of this spaghettification of pipes that I've just constructed right now. This is not really a tenable solution in the long run because it's going to get in the way of a lot of my other base building. But it's good enough to just get this basic stuff up and running. I'm also going to get rid of that. Alright. And now that the research is finished, I can go to my refinement tab, go to my water sieve. Whoops. It was at the top, not at the bottom. Let's extend these pipes so that the water will input on this side, it will come out on that side. Let's delete this additional pipe because we don't need it. And we'll actually slow down the water from coming through. Or it can slow it down. And now that I have a new blueprint available, I'm just going to get some fertilizer because it's not a duplicate. And let's hook up this by putting some additional heavy wall wire. Nice. And increase the priority of the water sieve. Typically, I like to leave my water sieve on a very high priority, like 7 or 8. The reason for that is because if I run out of clean water, it's easy for later on when you have, say, crops that might be growing from like a water supply, or if you have, say, oxygen being produced from an electrolyzer that uses water as an input, your base can run out of a lot of vital materials, like oxygen. And you might not notice that your water sieve is out of filtration medium until it becomes quite a hassle to deal with. So I like to make sure that it's on a high priority just so that it never runs out. Later on, we're going to end up making some automation that will feed the water sieve without having to have much duplicate input at all, and just have like a large supply of filtration medium nearby in some sort of like storage building. But for now, just having it on a high priority is good enough. All right. So what else can we do to improve the space? I'm going to build a storage bin, similar to how I built one up here that had stuff for my research stations. I'm going to build one down here and have it contain all the coal. And that way my duplicates won't pick up small amounts of coal, but they'll pick up much larger amounts and deposit them right into this storage bin. Let's go with consumable ore, coal, and on a priority of 8. Nice. Very good. And it looks like I'm going to need to get some more coal soon. So I'm actually going to tell my duplicates to dig over here and collect this vein of coal. Just so I don't need to worry about that much more for the remainder of this video. All right, excellent. So the next thing I'm going to do is research bathrooms, and this wasn't something I necessarily needed to do in this video, but it's just a quick addition. So I'd like to get that done and just build those so I don't need to worry about these ever going bad. Right, and we've run out of calories, so I'm going to tell my duplicates to begin constructing mush bars again. Turn off the lice loaf. I can keep the lice loaf on. Doesn't really make a difference. The only time I need to turn these off is when I want to specifically make lice loaf, because I'm starting to accumulate a lot of meal lice. Otherwise it's fine, because I don't mind building lice loaf when there's meal lice available. And then whenever it runs out, which it will, then they'll just go back to making mush bars. Alright, so the research is completed. So now I'm going to finish off this building with constructed tiles and make a new room up above where I'm going to make a bathroom. So let's dig out the natural tiles that are surrounding this. Let's make this ladder go up taller. Eventually I'm going to move this ladder a little bit off to the right and rearrange this. I'll get rid of this tile, and put this ladder here in the middle. For now this is fine though. Pardon the thumping, there's somebody upstairs. And while that's completing, I'm going to get one more research, and that is pneumatic tiles. I don't actually remember where pneumatic tiles are in the research tree, so it might take me a moment to find them. Oh, I already got them with the last research. Perfect. So let's pause for a moment, and I'm just going to place pneumatic tiles alongside some of these central columns. And I'm going to place deodorizers along these central locations, just to make sure that I can get rid of any polluted oxygen as it goes up and down the base. So by putting them in these central locations, eventually polluted oxygen that happens to be in any of these rows will float along to the right or float along to the left and reach one of these deodorizers where it will be eliminated. By putting them just in these central locations, that's more than enough to get rid of almost all, if not all, of the polluted oxygen. So we can have these being constructed. And currently, we've reached another interesting problem. Checking my F1 tab, I saw that my base is beginning to run out of oxygen, and this can be quite the emergency. We have enough oxygen supply coming from these oxygen diffusers for more duplicants than I have built right now. Enough for potentially 11 duplicants. So the problem lies somewhere else. And I believe it's that we might be running out of algae, or these are not receiving enough algae. The other potential problem is that I may be expanding my base faster than these oxygen diffusers can supply oxygen, but most likely they are running out of algae, and my duplicants are taking too long to go find the algae and supply it to these oxygen diffusers. So what I'm going to do is build another storage bin and fill it with algae. So let's go to my organic materials. Unfortunately, my duplicants have gone to the bathroom on the floor, but I'll have to wait a moment in order to deal with that. As you can see, the game can become quite hectic very quickly. Let's deal with that spilled waste. And improve the priority of this to 8, where it's going to have the algae come in there. And let's make sure that these have a high priority. Okay, so they only have a priority of 5, so they're often doing other tasks instead of supplying the oxygen diffusers. So by putting this to priority 6, that should be enough to make sure that they run continuously. In addition, I'm going to mop up this little bit of polluted water down here. If you saw it for the moment that it was there, your duplicants can perform mop tasks even when they're surrounded by too much water to mop, as long as the particular liquids that you are asking them to mop has a small enough amount. This is actually a trick that you can use to trick your duplicants into getting rid of like big sections of water, like say here where there's 1,000 kilograms. It's much too much for your duplicants to initiate a task. If I tell them to mop here, it'll just say, well, here it says not on floor, but if I tell them to go over here, it says there's too much liquid. What you can do, however, is say build a block here and then tell your duplicants to deconstruct that block. So while that block is being deconstructed, you just rapidly pause and unpause the game. And the moment that it finishes deconstruction, water will start pouring into the block. And if you catch it just before the water actually fills the block back up to its full capacity, you can initiate a mop task. And the mop task will just sit there on the floor until a duplicant deals with it. And the duplicant doesn't care if now it has too much water. They'll do the mop task like happily, as long as there was a small enough amount of water to do it in the first place. So you can you can trick a duplicant to come down here and mop this entire pool of water just by telling them to mop right here after you deconstruct a tile. And then it'll just come and merely do it until eventually they get bored and go to the bathroom or go to sleep or whatever. And then you might need to make a new task and have a new duplicate come and do it. So we have a new blueprint available. Let's get a wart seed, which is going to be quite useful for us later on, getting rid of some heat. Currently there's not much heat around the base. If I click F3, going to the heat tab, we can see that most of the base is very low in temperature. 20 being an ideal temperature. Going above 30 causes a lot of problems with basic farms like mealwood. So now I'm going to construct this bathroom. Let's see here. I'm going to go to my plumbing tab. Each bathroom is going to require at least one lavatory. You can also build showers, and if I go to medicine tab, you can build sinks. Sinks can go wherever you want. They don't have to go in bathrooms. None of these buildings have to go in a bathroom, but having a bathroom improves morale. And also there's some functional reasons for it as well. For example, by having your duplicates go to a bathroom that necessarily has a sink. So let's actually just place this so I can show you. I'm going to build a sink first. What the sink does is when a duplicate tries to pass it, they will wash their hands. That removes a lot of germs from the duplicate and prevents the spread of germs throughout your base. Next, I'm going to put a lavatory from the plumbing tab so they can actually go to the bathroom. And then I'm going to put a shower. And I've heard an interesting argument that showers are not required in this current build of the game. They don't do enough to be justified. They might actually give you no real benefit. I haven't checked. I'm used to building showers, so I just assumed that they had some tangible benefit. I'll be checking that in a later video, but currently I'm just going to build it. And that's all that we need for this bathroom, actually. So I'll wall it off on this side, and then I'm going to probably put room for my duplicants to eat their food over here. And the reason I do this is because I'd like to have my duplicants, whenever they come eat their food, also go through the bathroom so that they wash their hands, and I don't need to build two sinks. So let's hook this up. Each of these has an input pipe that, oops, mouse glitched out again. Sorry about that. Each of these has an input pipe that takes in clean water. So we're going to hook that all up. We'll leave this space so that we can actually put a liquid bridge, so the water can continue unimpeded whenever this is not in use. And we're going to have this trio of output pipes come to the top. Actually, which way was it? Either direction is fine. So we'll put it up. And then this will come down here. And we'll have a liquid bridge. And have this come down here. And I'll actually connect them like this. So combining pipes has a similar problem to splitting pipes, where you can have difficulty with having the full throughput of a pipe if you are combining them. However, by having a liquid bridge, you can eliminate that problem, but in the opposite fashion. When you're splitting a pipe, the liquid bridge has full priority. So all of the available liquid will first go through the liquid bridge, then will continue down the pipe. When you are combining pipes, liquid bridges have minimal priority. So first, all of the liquid that's coming through the pipe will go across the junction, then any available liquid inside the pipe will go through. And any available liquid in the pipe will add itself to packets that aren't full. So for example, here we have, there we go, 1 kilogram of polluted water, whereas the pipe has a maximum capacity of 10 kilograms of polluted water in this packet. So if there's any available water in this liquid bridge, it will fill this up all the way to 10 kilograms. So that way you can combine these with maximum throughput. So we just need to wait for our duplicates to finish sleeping and building this. All right, fantastic. And now we can get rid of these outhouses. And finally, what I'm going to do is go to these pneumatic doors. And as you may have seen in my video on doors and how they work, I'm going to go to the access permissions and make it a default of no one has access and no one has access. And the reason for this is just to force my duplicates to go through the sink rather than coming from the left, going all the way through and reaching the lavatory. Now they're forced to go through the right, go through the sink, and then go to the lavatory. All right. So if we go to F4 and check our gas tab, we can see that almost all the carbon dioxide in the base has been eliminated. We still have a problem with some carbon dioxide here on the bottom left because it's difficult for it to reach our carbon skimmer. We have some problems with carbon dioxide pooling on the right side of my base. So this will eventually be eliminated by opening up this side and allowing the free flow of gases. And then eventually they will be able to effectively pool at the bottom and be eliminated. Although by that time I'll probably have to move the carbon skimmer perhaps lower down. In addition, we've managed to get rid of some of the polluted oxygen that's floating around. If we watch this for a moment, I believe it was eliminated, although it may have potentially joined this pack of polluted oxygen over here. Though I'm confident they will eventually be eliminated. Part of the reason there is still polluted oxygen in the base is because these polluted water jugs that we created by mopping up the polluted water from the bathroom accidents slowly off-gas polluted oxygen if the surrounding pressure isn't high enough. So until I find, or I build a solution rather, to eliminate this polluted water by dumping this somewhere else, there's going to be a continuous source of polluted oxygen putting dangerous oxygen, polluted oxygen into my base. So that will eventually need to be dealt with. And I'll probably work my way towards that system in the next video when I build a more sustainable storage system for water. All right, I've hit all the tasks that I've set for myself for this video. It was a little bit messier than previous videos, but I hope it was clear enough. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in below and I'll try to get to it. And have a good day.